let's not take too much away from what goes on social media, but it looks like a couple of very important Georgia Bulldogs are hinting at returning to the team in 2024. That's what's happening on Instagram with Javon, Bullard, and Kamari Lassiter, and that feel like that's going all over the place on social media. So I wanted to bring that up, and let's talk about that, because look, if those two guys return to Georgia in 2024, we're talking about a different ball game here. We're talking about a very experienced secondary unit back there with Starks, Lassiter. You'll have Everett, you'll have Humphrey back, you'll have a ton of really good freshmen going there. But having Bullard and Lassiter possibly return to Georgia would be very, very big for the Georgia Bulldogs. It would immediately give Georgia the number one secondary in college football if those guys return, because we're talking about 2-year starters, right? Guys that started in both 2022 and 2023, and guys that were around for the back-to-back run and contributed to the back-to-back run and contributed to the 29-game win streak for Georgia. This is really big in a lot of ways. I saw someone on the internet compare it to when Nick Chubb and Sony Michel decided to return to Georgia in 2017 after their junior season in 2016. I don't know if that would have the same significance, although that would be very huge for Kirby Smart. And that was very big for Kirby Smart back then, when those guys, and Lorenzo Carter, Bellamy, Ledbetter, all those guys, they returned. After Kirby Smart's first year at Georgia, obviously that didn't go super well, right? When you talk about 5 wins, but it was a year one for Kirby. Literally, him learning how to be a head coach and learning how to be a head coach at a giant football program like Georgia, dipping his toes in the water. He gets those guys to return for another year. And first of all, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel are Georgia legends, and they helped lead Georgia to a national championship. They didn't win, right? You can argue that Georgia should have won that game. They didn't finish it off, but Georgia was very close to winning the national championship. Why? Talent, right? Obviously, with Nick and Sony, that's talent, but experience. It's kind of the combination of both is what makes that such a dangerous thing for the rest of the country, what would make Georgia so dangerous. When you move on to this time with Kamari Lassiter and Javon Bullard, that would be significant as well, because you'd be talking about a secondary unit that's very experienced. And it ties in a little bit to what happened in 2021. Ryan Cooley from Dawg Post here, talking about a couple of older players on the Georgia team that might return. They're at least making a hint at it on Instagram. Real quick, the newsletter. I'm linking Dawg Post's insider newsletter. It's free, and I'm linking it in the description down below. All you've got to do, if you haven't signed up already, is click the link in the description that I'm providing for you. You type your email in to the text box, and then every single day you'll have free stories, you'll have insider stories. Every single piece of Georgia content that we're producing on dawgpost.com, almost got through that very smoothly, will be pushed out to you in your inbox every single day. 5-star Georgia fans are already signed up for the Dawg Post newsletter. 2021, that Georgia team was... First of all, that Georgia team was just sick, right? And you think about all of the guys on the team. Well, there were a lot of guys that had been around, a lot of guys that had played significant football, and that's part of why they were so good. You think about Jordan Davis, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Lewis Seen, Darian Kendrick. You think about just those 6 guys that I named on that 2021 defense, how experienced they were. It wasn't a young team, it was an older team. And then you talk about Stetson was an older guy. Zamir and James were older. They all decided, hey, we're going to do this for a senior year, a year 4. We're going to come back. Kyrus Jackson in 2022, right? Examples of players who decide to return. It bodes well, because college football is, let's face it, and even now, way more so, college football is a fluid world. It is a fluid world, and team continuity is about to go out the window to an extent. And so having people return will give you an advantage, and it always will. But I feel like even more now than it did before would give teams an advantage in college football, because now There's less gelling to do. The gelling's been going on this entire time. The experience, the verbiage, the signal calling, the snaps, everything about it is a little bit better because these guys are a little bit older. If you think about Kamari, Lassiter, and Javon Bullard specifically, I've been talking about this conceptually for a little bit. Let's go back to talking about them specifically. Actually, let's talk about their Instagram posts, right? Because this is all hypothetical at this point in time. When I'm recording this and publishing this, there hasn't been an announcement. But, Javon Bullard just made an Instagram post, and he's, in his Georgia gear, and then he's on the sideline in it, and his caption said perception. I actually forget what his caption said, but Kamari Lassiter commented, "Oh, so we're running it back." And then Javon Bullard said, "I will if you will." So they're at least hinting at it, maybe joking about it, teasing the Georgia fan base a little bit. But there's already been one key guy that said, "Hey, I'm coming back," and that's Carson Beck. And you want to go play the social media game again? What did we see in the comment section of Carson Beck's Instagram post? You saw all sorts of Georgia players commenting and talking about how huge it was. Eyeball emoji. I'm not trying to take too much of what happens on social media, but that is part of the real world nowadays. And I don't think that they would just joke about that lightheartedly. And another thing to note is these decisions are not easy for these players. I mean, these guys are weighing financial, academic, athletic, family decisions all in one when deciding, hey, am I going to put my name in the hat at the NFL draft and take this to the next level? Am I going to return and grow a little bit? And look, we saw last year Cedric Van Pran. He said he had unfinished business. That's why he returned to Georgia in 2023. Maybe he didn't finish all the business that he was talking about there when you talk about winning a national championship, but he made that decision to return, and that was huge for Georgia, having an experienced guy like that. But the Georgia team, I felt that this 2023 Georgia team was the best team in college football. I think that we've legitimately seen 3 years in a row Georgia boasts the best team in college football. And this team will not win the national championship. It won't have a chance to compete for it. That's one thing. But at the end of the day, this 2023 team is not a championship team. It just didn't win. Despite me thinking it was the best team, if not, it definitely was one of the 4 best teams. I feel confident about that. When you look ahead to next year, there's going to be so much turnover in college football. Sometimes it's hard to evaluate which teams are going to be really good when there's so much. Like, what's Ohio State going to be? I have real questions about what Ohio State's going to be next year with all those transfers out, right? For Georgia, if you had a lot of guys returning, because we haven't had an announcement yet. I haven't heard any announcement on guys like Nazir Stackhouse or Warren Brinson or Javon Bullard and Kamari Lassiter, right? A couple of the offensive linemen we still haven't heard from. We haven't heard from the running backs. Are Kendall Milton and Daijun Edwards going to return to Georgia? Because they certainly can. I think both of them would have an opportunity to get drafted in the NFL, get drafted to the NFL in April, but they might decide, hey, I want to return to Georgia. Now, the staff, Georgia's staff, has to make some decisions as well. How do we want our rooms to look? Because, they go out and get a couple wide receivers. Well, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint returned to Georgia. Will he spend a 5th year in Athens? Because he's a guy I think has an opportunity to maybe get drafted, but could he benefit from a 5th year at Georgia? Will he get the ball enough to really benefit from a 5th year at Georgia, right? Because Georgia added London Humphreys, Georgia added Nitro Tuggle, Georgia added Sokovie White, right? So there's 3 new receivers that are joining the receiver room for Georgia in 2023. That's kind of my point with all this. When you talk about Bullard and Lassiter, if Javon Bullard, replacing them would be tough. Who would replace Kamari Lassiter? Or would it just be Julian Humphrey and Dalen Everett, just the older guys in the corner room? Is Ellis Robinson going to make an impact right away? Would KJ Bolden get a shot to start day one if Javon Bullard left and there's a safety spot open? Would Janelle Aguero do that? What's Tyke Smith going to do? That's really where we're at with the Georgia Bulldogs right now. We don't know who is coming back, who's not. But I tell you what, there's a lot of players that are making it seem like they might. Lab McConkey's making it seem like he might come back. These 2 guys are making it seem like they might come back. Right now, it kind of seems like those defensive linemen might come back. I'd lean more towards Edwards and Milton leaving. I would lean towards them leaving, especially the way Kendall Milton talked about the Orange Bowl and it being another opportunity to play with his guys. And I've said that probably a billion times by now, as I repeat some points. I think that with NIL and you being able to make money, it's more of an incentive to come back. And I tell you what, all the players on the 2023 team will feel like there was unfinished business for Georgia. So maybe we will see number 22 and number 3 in the red and black again. Links are down below. Thanks for watching.